Deceit, Deception, and Deliverance. Written by Robert C. Brewster. Narrated by Robert C. Brewster. Chapter 1. Montreal, 1984. The water was as clear as glass, the sounds soothing and sweet as only Mother Nature can provide. The tranquil surroundings were all-encompassing. As far as the eye could see was an unblemished view of water and trees. A lone figure patiently stood along the shoreline with fishing rod in hand, carefully scanning the surface of the lake. The slight hum of a small aircraft approaching in the distance was the only man-made sound spoiling a perfect moment in time. A rainbow trout glistened in the late morning sun as it gracefully leaped in the air, catching a mosquito in mid-flight. Like a soaring hawk, the person on shore pounced on the moment. With split-second timing and cat-like precision, the cast was made to within inches of where the fish had been mere seconds ago. The bait was taken, and the angler artfully tugged the line and secured the hook. As the fish fought for its life, jumping sporadically to delay the inevitable, the sound of the small plane grew louder as it slowly came into view. The angler on shore looked up at the plane only long enough to watch it explode into thousands of tiny pieces that fell like rain over the pastoral setting. The trout, now only inches from the lake shore, was carefully picked up, unhooked and then released by the long, slender, manicured fingers of a beautiful young woman. Then, with the utmost of calm, she casually picked up her belongings and walked into the underbrush, leaving no traces of her ever having been there. Chapter 2. Tony Lamoboni felt uncomfortable, but sat patiently in the antique solid oak chair that came with the equally solid 300-year-old desk that was topped with a 5-inch hand-carved piece of solid oak. It was highlighted with 8 drawers that opened and closed like they were sliding on rails of butter. There was also a secret compartment that only he knew about. Tony was quite sure of this fact, since the person who told him about it was the craftsman who had built it in the first place. At least Tony thought he was, but in the last few days he wasn't so sure anymore. There was this spirit who called himself Julius that supposedly talked to him in this very room when the rigors of being a crime boss tore and pulled at his sanity to the point where he believed he saw and heard the ghost-like figure of Julius. The first night the ungodly figure had appeared 6 months ago, he had risen up from the center of his desk while Tony sat alone sipping on 25-year-old Scotch whiskey, something he had been doing a lot of lately. Upon seeing the image, his reaction had been gut instinct. He'd slid open the right-hand drawer closest to him and pulled out an expensive old Colt that he'd inherited from his grandfather, and fired all 6 shots at the aspiration, hoping it would disappear. Eventually it did, but it left Tony with 6 holes in his office wall that weren't nearly as big as the ones his associates were quickly coming to believe he had in his head. Tony was freaked out even more than his normal paranoid self. On his best days he was impossible to be around, but the last few days people had been avoiding him like swine flu. There was a valid reason, of course, for his present state of mind. A week earlier he had accomplished the impossible, and everything was pointing to the fact that he was going to get away with it. Only 3 people knew why what had happened that day happened. Now Tony was the only one still alive who knew the why and the secret he would take to his grave, along with the extra $20 million of uncut diamonds he now possessed. Tonight Julius was quiet, and no brightly illustrated visions danced inside
Sample complete. Ready to continue?